Welcome, everyone, to the Eugene City Council meeting for August 9th. Welcome to everyone here and everyone at home. The first part of the meeting is a public forum where we welcome people to speak to us on any topic, except for those items which have already been heard by a hearings official or are on tonight's agenda as a public hearing. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. When you come to the podium, please give your name, city of residence, and for Eugene residents, your ward if known. The timer and lights indicate the time you have to speak. A yellow light will come on when you have 15 seconds to complete your comments. The red light indicates the end of 3 minutes. And we have 8 people signed up for this evening. And the first one is hard for me to read the last name. It is Adam.
Just say Adam.
Adam of Adams.
The Adam.
The Adam.
Hi, my name's Adam Bernstein. I'm a downtown business person. I live here in Eugene. Just wanted to speak in support of the efforts that the city has made on the behalf of us downtown, and especially around the Kesey Square area and on Broadway. I've been a staunch supporter of civil rights my whole life and marched more than I'd like to admit for that. But in this particular case, I believe that there's been a tremendous amount of improvement downtown. And while I don't support changing my philosophy on civil rights, I do believe that we should continue to give the city and our police department and the community at large every opportunity possible to continue forging ahead on a positive downtown, and the change has been extreme and dramatic. I still have 2 minutes. Wow. Before the exclusion zone came into being and the many changes that the city manager put in play and the police department put in play, almost once a month I would have, once every month or two, I would have people running through my restaurant because of some bad behavior, some bad drug deal gone down, some bad something. The change is phenomenal, and I hope that you guys can see to it that we give it every opportunity to find out if it continues to be viable and extend it as long as possible. And thanks for listening. You can do whatever you want with my other minute and a half.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Eugene Drix is next. Drix, you're up.
Hi, Eugene. My name is Drix, and I live on High Street. I'm so proud to say that. Usually gets a grin out of people from Portland. I'm here to just talk about community. This is our last meeting before summer break, so I should be memorable. I'll do my best at this. I live in the West University neighborhood. Neighbors, it's called. Charlotte Lemon named it that. It sounded friendly at the time, but it's hard to work with. You always have to say neighborhood association after it. So we call it the One. We've already won, and we're connected as one. And this week we had a party in our park, which was pretty cool. We had it was first night out, big night out, some night out. It's national night out. It almost sounds like a gay function. It always gets me is what it was. But boy, it was cool. Started out with 5 minutes of me and the Oregon Duck, if you can imagine. He doesn't have much to say, but boy, he sure talked a lot. And we kept the patter going, you know, and that duck can walk across any street, and the cars not only stop, they get out and wave. It was just a real phenomenon. So we had fun with that, and then this big, huge tour bus showed up. Looked like B.B. King was going to get out, and Mayor Kitty and the councilors, you all got out, and oh, it was thrilling. It was beautiful, and the sun was just setting, and then more police officers than I've seen since I last watched Chips on TV, and everyone was happy, and there were tables set up, and we were talking, and oh, I just felt like a real reward for all the work we've done. And it was great. When it was all done, we had a sofa nearby. That's the logo for our neighborhood, so I took it home. Now I keep recruiting my students to figure out my neighbors' students. But just somehow lifting a sofa up to the attic isn't as easy to do as you thought it was. So this will be our third time tomorrow. I digress. Community is what we are if we're all together, and we are together. I don't have much of a social life. It's hard to believe, but you guys are pretty much a big part of it. So it shows you, is that pitiful or brilliant? I don't know. It's a line I walk, but Yeah, I just feel like we're a class getting together here trying to push this city up the river, and we're doing a great job. Downtown is exciting. I love that empty center court building that will soon have a different name of some name. I love the way we're dealing with all the people down there. The exclusions, we're trying to just have a nice, clean, safe city. It's not easy, and I keep encouraging new ideas, new thinking, because great Scott, that's how the future is made. We have a place in town called the Dining Room, for example. It's a place that you can go and get food. It feeds the homeless and all they do. Strangest phenomenon is that they put something in the food there, which is so amazing. It's called integrity, and it's called dignity. And I urge everyone to just put on an old shirt and go there and have a meal, and you'll see it. There's a doorman, they have a dessert tray, and each time they're doing that, they're interacting with the people. So when they're done, everyone's positive. There's no arguments, and it's just so pleasant. So in the last 5 seconds, I don't know how to sum that up for the rest of the town, but I'm doing my best. Have a great summer. See you on the other side. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Layton is next, followed by Jared Mason-Gear.
I'm Mary Layton. I live in Betty Taylor part of town, and I'm here as a person who operates a school downtown, and I'm here to tell you just say yes. I think that first you should say yes to what you've been asked from about the exclusion zone. We need to operate on the basis of data. We don't have the data yet. They tell us we'll have some version of the data in 30 days, and that within 150 days entirely we'll have a chance to digest it, to decide what we want to do, and it's silly to have tried this experiment for 2 years and not have data. And furthermore, I trust the guys who are asking for it. I know how well they know people downtown. I know they have been discriminating in using this. I know they take great care of people. They really do a 360-degree assessment. And it's better than the amendment, whichever one it is, that gives us the right of free speech and association, because what they give us is an intelligent application of civility, and it goes past our duty and into something we want to have. I think we should say yes to them. They've earned a yes. So that's it. I think the exclusion zone has had a good effect. But I need to know that it's not been enforced unfairly, and I think the numbers should be able to tell us that, and if they can't, we should ask us why we're collecting them. I wanted to say thanks for saying yes to the storefront art project. I walked by the building, My Heart Still Desires, and noticed that it had pictures in the windows, and that really makes all of the empty places downtown look better. Including the one we currently operate above. And so the storefront art project has been a great deal. It doesn't cost anybody any money. It's probably a little hassle, but it's a great change. And the last thing is I want to tell you today's story about your positive influence in the yes direction. I won't say who, but I was talking to one of the great or near great people who operate downtown and who are not famously friends of Network Charter School, asking for a favor that could cost money, not a lot, but it's going to be a little hassle. And that person said, the city would like me to cooperate in the support of the school. I would like to do the right thing for these kids, and I would like, therefore, to do what the city would like me to do. That's what I love to hear from people, and I thank you for creating the atmosphere, the expectation among city and city staff people, my favorites of whom are the permits and planning people, for supporting us as well as they can under these difficult circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you. Jared Mason-Gear is next, followed by Kimberly Glidden.
Good evening, Mayor Piercy, councilors. Jared Mason-Gear here on behalf of the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce as well as Downtown Eugene, Inc., 1401 Willamette Street, Eugene 97401. Here testifying in support of the Downtown Public Safety Zone. We support the zone itself. You've probably already received a number of emails from our members, both downtown and those that just recognize the importance of downtown core to our area's economy and the importance of creating a safe space there for our merchants. But I don't think that this conversation tonight really is about the zone itself so much as it's about how we make decisions here. After a 2-year trial, I think it's a shame not to go another 150 days so that you have adequate data to really explore an objective and complete analysis of the efficacy of the zone. So we are urging you to take the extra time, allow the police department to come back with the analysis, and then sort through the data there to see if it's working. Thank you.
Thank you. Kimberly Glidden is next, followed by Betty Snowden.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Gladen. I live on West Broadway, and I'm in the downtown core. I spend an awful lot of time downtown, and I see pretty much a lot of things going on. Sometimes I'd say I see pretty much a little bit of everything going on downtown. And I want to say thank you. Many of the things that you've done have made some big improvements and big changes, you know, in some very nice ways, you know, gentle reminders about being courteous. Some of it I'm sad, you know, that things like benches had to be removed and that, but I understand that, you know, sometimes when an area is ill, you know, I like to say our downtown has a little bit of an illness, maybe a little bit of a cold, and to fix it you have to sometimes, you know, take the bandage off or, you know, let things air out and clean. And I really appreciate the city's efforts in that. I would really ask you to, in that same light and the improvements, I feel that the safety zone has improved the downtown in many respects. There was a lot of previous in years escalating homeless on homeless violence, and that many homeless people and that many mentally ill people, and just like as in the case of the Thomas Egan Warming Center, when you push them all together there are problems and issues, and you add a criminal element that comes to prey on them. And for the merchants downtown, it's an economic disadvantage to us, but it's also a dangerous for people in the downtown area when the arguing and the pushing and the shoving get started and going. Removing some of the really hardcore elements out of the mix allows the pressure to come off and things to quiet down, and I've noticed a definite improvement in the downtown. Many of the residents in my building have noticed that in the downtown. Many of them were all low income. We have to take the bus. We walk. So we see it all. People with kids see it all. I think that having it safe for our families and all of our residents, including our youth and including the homeless and the mentally ill, to not have the dangerous elements there to victimize them again and again. Part of the big picture is that we do have a problem, you know, with not enough jail beds, not enough social services, and those things have to be addressed. But the immediate thing is to make it safer so that we can have the money and the funds and not lose any more businesses in the tax breaks so we can get those services going. I mean, that's a key thing. I would ask you to please extend it. I think it's been good for the downtown, and I think the data will hopefully show that too, and we can always fix it or improve things, you know, if it is being indiscreetly. But I see the same people day after day, so I know they're not just being taken away because we're tired of looking at them, because they've been on the street every day for 2-3 years just hanging out spanging and dealing, so they're there. Thank you.
Thank you. Betty Snowden is next, followed by Cassandra Snowden.
Betty Snowden, P.O. Box 5166, Eugene, Oregon 97405. And this is to our mayor and city council. I'm in favor of extending the exclusion order and allowing Chief Kearns the extra time he needs. This is a story before the exclusion order. For over 15 years, this African-American family was trying to run a business in Eugene, Oregon. This family dealt with being called the N-word, BITCHs, and all manner of names all day long, and I mean all day long. Coming into the store, people would pull down their inventory, laugh, and say, "What are you going to do about it? If I go to jail, I'll be out in a half an hour and I'll come back and do it again." This family has been hit physically, threatened with bodily harm, had knives pulled on them, windows broken, and you can go see the window, it's still broken because I won't fix it until we know for sure that this thing is not going to happen again. Vomiting, going to the bathroom in front of the store. When it was time to lock up and go home, we'd have 50 to 60 to 100 of the offenders, the same ones that we dealt with all day long, at the corner while going to our car. You know what? I found it very interesting that this family never received a phone call from the ACLU concerning their rights and what they were going through. I'm asking each and every one of you to ask yourself, if you experienced, and we have tapes to prove and show exactly what I'm talking about, phone calls to the police, so none of this is made up. If you experience what this family has experienced, would you think that your rights have been violated? Oh, but I want to tell you something wonderful that happened 2 years ago for repeat offenders. And I say repeat offenders. The exclusion order. This order is not about how you look, because probably if it was about how you looked, I'd probably be in jail. It's not about rich people trying to ban homeless people from the downtown, and it's certainly not about the way you dress. It is a public safety issue. I looked out the window from the store time and time again, and I would see older women walking down the street being hit, their purses taken away from, time and time again, the same repeat offenders. But this is about each of us having the freedom without fear to conduct a business downtown, to walk the beautiful streets, and for all the citizens of Eugene, Oregon to feel safe and enjoy our city. This family, of which I am a part of, can see the improvement of change through the exclusion order. I say yes to Chief Kearns and his staff for further data, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Cassandra Snowden is next, followed by Susanna Meyer.
Cassandra Snowden, P.O. Box 5166, Eugene, Oregon. Before the exclusion ordinance was in effect, me and my family were subjected to racial harassment. Our lives were being threatened. We were told our business was going to be blown up. Since the exclusion order, the harassment happens less frequently. We were being harassed based upon what we look like, so why shouldn't our civil rights be protected? Don't we have the right to feel safe on a daily basis, as well as people in our downtown community? This ordinance is about repeat offenders who break the law and harass people. I don't care if you're wearing a business suit or a dress. If you are breaking the law and victimizing people, there should be consequences. To get rid of the exclusion order would be a mistake. Our downtown community deserves to feel safe and not threatened.
Thank you. And our final person tonight is Susanna Meyer.
Hello, my name is Susanna Meyer, and I'm a resident of Eugene. I'm the director of Energy Village. We are an organization dedicated to community growth through collaboration. I've come to speak with you today on behalf of the people who have shared their opinion during our Energy Village meetings over the last 4 years in hopes of furthering the collaborative spirit downtown, and today to focus specifically on the issue of homeless youth downtown. Energy Village means it takes everyone's energy to create the village. The village can be an event, a program, a center, a city, the world. In this case, we're talking about a center downtown, a cultural commons, an information center, a one-stop shop, where one can find out about the valuable programs that might not always be as simple to find as you might imagine. According to many caring, concerned, and reliable citizens of Eugene, a center could be a positive way to address some of the problems we are currently facing when it comes to homeless and bored youth downtown. The center would foster collaboration simply by offering a safe and non-competitive environment for the many organizations currently working on the issue, yet still facing problems with lack of resources and funding. We've held 5 of our Energy Village Think Tank Interactive Lecture Series this year hosted at the Davis. Think Tank introduces the community to its visionaries as well as focuses on the concerns that affect us all, often problems so controversial they seem to polarize the audience, though our goal is to unite and pool our resources in order to solve these problems together. Our last lecture focused on the homeless youth. Before every lecture, I do research by speaking with the experts and reading the reports and statistics. I had the opportunity to hear about the history in Eugene, what worked and what failed. I met numerous times with Mike Sullivan from City Planning, the police chief, and Richie Weinman. I also sat down with Diana Avery, Liz Schwartz from The Looking Glass, Pearl Wolf, Michelle from Metro Low Income Housing, and John Van Landingham. Those who have lived in Eugene for the past few decades know the youth downtown is an ongoing problem. They've also seen many well-intentioned people trying to help come and go, sometimes unprepared to face the extra problems they created in their efforts to remedy the situation situation, leaving the work to the trained experts in local social services, however underfunded and overworked. Still, Eugene is known by its neighbors as having the best social services and mental health resources. And so it comes as no surprise that the police in other cities, when faced with the same issues as downtown Eugene, might choose to send their homeless youth our way on a free one-way train ticket. If we are to be Maine Central Station, what will be our response? Will we create more ways to fault our youth for their behavior, thereby giving us the chance to find them and throw them in jail or the Johnson unit? Is this the best use of our taxpayers' money? Perhaps in some cases this is the only solution. But for many of the youth looking for direction and opportunities, there are other possibilities. In collaboration with Joshua Kimes Space at 55 West Broadway, Energy Village proposes to create an information section with lists of social services specifically for the homeless youth in our downtown Cultural Commons Center. According to the, is it over?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll continue our meetings in September, so we hope to collaborate with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Going to close the public forum. Thank everyone for coming tonight. Most of you came to speak about the public safety zone, and we're going to be voting on that later tonight. From my point of view, we asked the police commission to report back to us. They have been unable to do it in a timely enough manner because we also asked them to deal with the taser issue, which they had to spend a lot of time on, so it's made it take longer for them to get to this. We want to hear back from them, so I certainly am going to support giving them the opportunity to report to us. Others, Councilor Ortiz.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank everybody for coming down tonight. So along that, I guess I can wait for my questions until when we're voting on the public.
If it's questions, you could, yes. If you have something you want to say to these guys, now's the time.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, I just do want to say, Drix, were you saying that we were the councilors?
He did. He said council leaders, but I like council leaders.
Council leaders?
I mean, because I have this vision of us up here with monkey ears.
Sounds like going to Disneyland.
I was thinking Mickey Mouse Club, yeah, but okay.
I'm just curious.
Whatever you said,
We probably are a little sad that we're your entertainment, but whatever. All right. Councilor Clark.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I, too, just wanted to say thank you to everybody for coming and speaking on behalf of your experience downtown with the public safety zone. I'm hopeful, too, that we'll certainly want to extend this long enough to look at the data, but beyond that, I had the opportunity to see this and see a good deal of this information already, so I'm hopeful we're going to continue. Thank you.
All right, I don't see anyone else in the queue, so we're going to move on to the next item on our agenda this evening, and that's a consent calendar. Council President?
Move to approve the items on the consent calendar.
Second.
Moved and seconded. See no one in the queue. Would you please vote on the consent calendar? 8 in favor and none in opposition. It passes. Thank you. The next item is the public hearing on the judicial evaluation. City Manager?
This is a public hearing on the performance of presiding municipal judge Wayne Allen. The Eugene Code requires a formal citizen review of the presiding judge's performance in the last year of the judge's four-year term. The public hearing is part of the citizen judicial review process.
Thank you. So those wishing to speak during the public hearing must submit a completed request to speak form to the information desk prior to the beginning of the public hearing, which I'm opening right now. And when you come to the podium, please give your name, city of residence, and for Eugene residents, your ward if known. You'll have 3 minutes to comment. There are lights on the podium. The yellow light indicates you have 15 seconds to complete your comments. The red light indicates the end of 3 minutes. I have 2 people signed up to speak tonight. Carol Berg Caldwell is first, followed by Majeska C. Screen.
Thank you. Carol Berg Caldwell, 2510 Augusta.
I was pleased at your July 28th work session, but not the least bit surprised to hear the glowing review of our presiding judge of municipal court, Wayne Allen. In mid-April, I began going to court, now nearly on a daily basis, to observe and to try to understand municipal court and how city ordinances are applied. But that very first day, that afternoon, I called and asked to speak to his aide, Gabriel, because I was so struck by the extra care that this good man, this judge, takes when he might perceive there is some misunderstanding or confusion on the part of the defendant of their rights. He takes that extra step to make sure they do understand before making decisions that could have such impact in their lives. I have seen this on nearly a daily basis with every judge there. I also wish to commend the staff because the professionalism and the courtesies and the care is abundantly clear. So thank you.
Thank you. Majeska C. Screen is next.
Majeska C. Screen, 7th Ward, live near 5th and Van Buren. I won't repeat so much of what Carol said, which I completely agree with. I've had the pleasure of sitting in, observing in municipal court also, not nearly as much as Carol has, but a number of times. And I also have, been very impressed with the whole, generally speaking, the whole court situation and the presiding judge, Allen. I want to say that I really appreciate how informative Judge Allen is with everybody in the courtroom, and also how carefully he chooses his words. And I noticed that when he met with you all in your work session, especially around the issue of the exclusion zone, he chose his words very carefully. And I'm not sure what he thinks about how the wording got changed here in the newspaper article, or what's being said by the police and other people around town in paraphrasing his words. But I did notice that he chose his words very carefully. And I noticed, for instance, that he distanced himself from that paragraph in the report that was done by the committee, which he was not on. That paragraph, I have to say, is just kind of the party line here in Eugene. And he distanced himself from that, and because I think he was carefully only speaking to what he sees and witnesses there, what comes before him on the bench. He was very carefully, it seemed to me, not addressing things that are not what comes before him on the bench. That's a whole other subject on the exclusion zone. So I really look forward to you reappointing Judge Allen for another 4 years, and I'm sorry if he won't be around for the whole 4 years, because he's been, I think, doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to close the public hearing, and thank you both for coming and speaking to us tonight, and for the attention that you've been paying to our court system. We appreciate that. Don't see any other comments, so thank you very, very much. And we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the action on the presiding judge reappointment. City Council President.
Yes, Mayor, I move to reappoint Wayne Allen as presiding judge.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Counselor, so all I want to say before we vote is, because people who are watching this might not know that, but we had a full work session and had a very thorough discussion of all the information about the judge's performance, and I think you will see by the vote that we are very pleased with that, and just want to say thank you and our appreciation for your good work on the behalf of our city. So with that, would you please vote? 8 in favor and none in opposition. It passes. Thank you very much, Judge Allen. All right, next item is item number 5. That would be the Transplant and Metro Plan amendments. Council President?
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the City Council adopt Council Bill number 5030, included as Attachment A, amending Transplan and the Metro Plan, as set forth in Exhibits A and B of that ordinance, based on the findings of consistency set forth in Exhibit C of that ordinance.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Can someone give a very brief couple sentences on what this is about, just in case someone would like to, nobody here? City manager? Kurt's here.
I'm sorry, you just wanted a general overview?
Yeah, very general, but I just think people deserve to know what we're talking about here.
The nature of these amendments are fairly factual. It's to bring the transplant and the same language, basically, that's in the Metro Plan more up to date. So it reflects the slower growth rates that we've had, so it puts the planning horizon out at the year 2027, just 12 years later than what the original plan had called for. And it removes a number of projects that have already been completed. So it's one step in many that will bring our transportation plan up to date.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much. Okay, I think we're ready to vote. Yes? Did you?
I have something.
You have a question? Oh, Al. I mean, Councilor Zelenka.
Yeah, in front of the councilors is a proposed amendment to this ordinance. I had a concern that the West Eugene Parkway is still in the plan, even though it is dead. And after talking with staff, we can't simply delete the project even though it's dead because of public hearing requirements and modeling requirements and other things. It's enough to say that it's not a simple thing to do. So, but I would like to take this opportunity, and I asked staff to craft this after talking to Catherine Brotherton at the City Attorney's Office, that to modify the trans plan so that it's clear that the some actions that have already occurred. And one of them is that the MPC has already voted to remove this project from the RTP, and that they have taken any funds out from underneath that project, so it cannot be relied upon as a planned transportation facility under the transportation planning rule. And that's what this amendment does. I don't think I need to read the entire amendment out loud because it's kind of lengthy, but what it does is basically add to the trans plan what has already occurred at the MPC and clarifies that the West Eugene Parkway is not to be relied upon as a project because there's no funds. So I would ask that the councilors support this, and so I move the amendment.
We have to put the main motion on the table, and then you'll amend it, right?
Oh, I thought you already did.
Did you put it on the table already?
So I would move to amend the main motion to include that are in front of you.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion, Councilor Clark?
Thank you, Mayor. While I recognize that the West Eugene Parkway is a project that is dead and not constrained and not funded in any of the regional transportation planning we're doing, it still has a placeholder status for legal reasons of us being able to prove, and this is going to get over my pay grade here real quick, so I'm looking to the city attorney to help me understand this a little better. There are still placeholder spots where this appears in order that, say, for example, were someone that was a property owner in West Eugene to apply to change a zone, we need to be able to do things to prove compliance with particular goals. And what I would not want us to do, which I think was done by a motion that a previous council had made under Bonnie Bettman's motion, was to put into some question our capacity to change zoning in West Eugene based on the language that's present and or now not present in some plans. So that's my belief at the moment. And here's my question. Section 2 of this amendment in its last sentence reads, thus, no WEP transportation project can be relied upon as a planned transportation facility under the state transportation planning rule. Does this put us in any jeopardy of being able to freely, or further jeopardy, to freely conduct the business of the city to change zones if the council so chose in any particular property and then be effectively prove compliance with transportation goals?
In fact, this changes nothing.
Okay.
at all. And that's because I think your current understanding is actually not as things are
Okay.
playing out. The reality is, because of the changes in these other plans, there's no funding. It's not constrained. This facility is clearly not going to be built. Therefore, developments that are proposed that would place traffic out in that area, they currently cannot rely on this facility as accommodating any of their traffic. And that's been, vetted up through the state and back down. So it's very clear that nobody can rely on it. This language would hopefully clarify that. So a user picking up the transplant document that appears to have the project in it would be able to see that actually they can't rely on that project.
Okay.
We can't remove it yet, but it is part of a product that's being developed for your review within the next year.
As a side note, what's our current status then as an impact of what we can and can't develop in West Eugene? Or what can and can't be developed by virtue of the council having the option to change any particular zone that we may want?
The WEP is non-existent. It's not a factor in
Right.
any of your considerations. So this language, it doesn't change that in any way.
Okay, thank you.
Is that clear?
Councilor Pryor?
Thank you. Actually, I think that Section 2 being added as a clarifying footnote is actually probably a good idea. I think it's a good thing to put there. My question was really more around items 1 and 3. The question I had is, these are being inserted in here, I think, in order to make sure that adoption coincides with all 3 jurisdictions. What would happen if we didn't include them and we pass ours and they don't pass theirs? I guess I'm trying to get at, is this really a benefit to ensuring consistency in adoption?
What we've done here, because of the timing, and for purposes of background, the City of Springfield has actually already adopted the ordinance as it appears in your package. The Lane County is scheduled to do so after this body acts. The West Eugene Parkway, adding this footnote, we believe, falls under the Metro Plan policies as being a 2-jurisdiction decision. So the rest of the package, the rest of the ordinance that you've received actually requires all 3 jurisdictions to adopt it. Dealing with this West Eugene Parkway issue is actually just a Eugene and Lane County issue. So the fact that Springfield has already passed its ordinance without this in it is not a problem. What we would do if the council passes the amended ordinance is we would ask Lane County to consider their ordinance along with this language. And should Lane County adopt it with this footnote, the footnote would be added.
Okay.
And sections 1 and 3 of the materials you got from Councilor Zelenka clarify that, so that if Lane County doesn't want to add this footnote, the rest of the ordinance still goes forward.
Good. Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to know. So I'm comfortable with all 3 of these then with that explanation. Thank you.
Councilor Zelenka?
So to clarify, my intent here was to make sure that any misunderstandings anybody had about why the WEP is still in this plan, even though it's dead, are now cleared up by this language. Also want to make it clear, I didn't write this. I expressed what I wanted to have occur and asked the city attorney's office to craft this because it is complicated, and I think they did an excellent job. But simply put, as Councilor Pryor said, it is a footnote that clarifies where we stand today, and actually I think is beneficial for folks in clarifying that this is not a project that can be relied upon.
Okay, I think we're ready to vote. Would you please vote? 8 in favor and none in opposition. It passes. And then you got to pass the main motion as amended. Would you please vote on that? 8 in favor and none in opposition. It passes. So, thank you very much. We'll go on to the next item, and that's a recommendation on proposal to name the new Willamette I-5 Bridge, the Willamette Passage Bridge. Council President.
I'm not seeing a recommended motion.
It's right here.
On this particular one. Interested. Okay, thank you.
You got it in
It's
front
not
of you on
the
that yellow sheet.
electronic version.
You got it right here.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I keep, in an effort to be sustainable, relying on the electronic version rather than the paper versions, and I
Change it last minute.
I'm seeing the results of that. I move to support the CPC recommendation and direct staff to prepare a letter to ODOT endorsing the name Willamette I want to say that right, and I almost messed up now, didn't I? Sorry about that. Willamette Passage Bridge. Did I get that right? Okay.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Counselor Zelenka.
I think this is a great idea, and it honors the Kalapuya tribe. And I just wanted to thank the CPC and especially David Sonicson for moving this forward. I think it's a great idea, and I'm more than happy to support this motion.
Counselor Clark.
I have a question, too. I think it's in the materials, but I suppose for the public's benefit, I'd like someone on the staff to clarify what the signage for this particular bridge will cost.
While you're at that, will you just put there's what, two criteria there that's on that we use for making our recommendations? Maybe you could do both of those.
And to clarify my question, of course, we're not renaming anything. We're naming something for the first time, which is a perfectly legitimate use of the money, is to put the signs up after you name it.
City Manager.
The cost of two 6x4 signs is approximately $960.
Okay, that sounds like a reasonable number to me, and I can support that. And I just want to say parenthetically that I never talk about this sort of thing publicly, but my great-great-grandmother was a member of the Blackfoot tribe in Montana. And this is the first time I've ever been able to publicly participate in something like this that honors that, and I'm proud to do it.
And the other piece to that, you want to mention that?
The stipulation that we do a public comment period, which we did, included on July 26th, I think, was the public hearing, and then we include anything for
Okay, thank you for that. I just want to be sure we cover all our bases here. Okay, thank you. All right, so I think we're ready to vote on this. Would you please vote? We have a recommendation, 8 in favor and none in opposition. So thank you all very, very much, and on it goes, right? Okay, it's only a recommendation on our part, but we know you've done all the work, so keep on moving. All right, next item on our agenda. An ordinance concerning downtown public safety zones. Council President.
Mayor, I move to adopt Council Bill Number 5033, the proposed ordinance concerning amending Ordinance Number 20419 by extending the sunset date and deadline for providing a recommendation regarding continued enforcement of the ordinance.
Moved and?
Second.
And seconded. Councilor Ortiz.
My questions. Thank you, Mayor. Oh, okay. I took the mute button off. So, I just have a little bit of concerns about the police commission being able to do this in a timely fashion. Can I get somebody to? Is it on their agenda? Because I've talked to several of them and they didn't seem to have an idea that was on their work plan.
The Police Commission has prepared an agenda for a public forum, a plan for a public forum.
And when will that date be?
To include, I'll need help with that. September 1st.
Okay.
And it's on their agenda beyond that.
On the September work session, okay. And they will be giving...
September 9th, okay. So public forum is the 1st.
Okay. I hope that they can get through this and let us really know what they feel or what the data shows. Because I really feel like I went out on a limb for this, and I am just hoping that I get what I need from this. I'm not guaranteeing anything. I feel like we've thrown everything but the kitchen sink at downtown, and I'm more than willing to do whatever I can while I'm in this office, but I just kind of, I've had heartburn over this the whole time that it's been in its place. Get a lot of testimony from the downtown folks. We've heard from people who've actually been excluded. And so I'll really be looking to see what the data has to say and the recommendation from the commission.
Councilor Taylor?
Thank you. It'll be no surprise, probably. I totally oppose excluding anyone from downtown. I think people have to be somewhere. If they are committing crimes, then there are other remedies. The police can arrest them, fine them, whatever. But I didn't vote for this in the first place, and in no way would I vote for excluding anyone from downtown. I think that it's a better place for people to be than a lot of other places. And the more people we have downtown, the better it is. I think we're going in that direction now. And I was very impressed with the ACLU. This is difficult, though, because difficult for me, because the people testifying for it, many of them are people that I like and admire, but I disagree with them on this. Thank you.
Councilor Clark?
Thank you, Mayor. I've seen a number of emails on this arguing on the merits of it, as Councilor Taylor has here to a degree with regard to the merits of the idea of the exclusion zone. I won't go into that argument because I think I'm hopeful that we'll do that at a later time. I'm just hopeful that we have a majority of my colleagues to extend this to look at the data both from the police commission and the data from the department and from the courts. I believe I know what it'll say based on what reports I've had of it to this point, and also wanted to say that aside from the public hearing that's at the library that the police commission subcommittee is going to hold, our police commission meetings of the 9th always begin with the opportunity for comments from the public. So if someone can't make it on the 1st and they want to comment on it, they should please come to the McNutt Room on the 9th and comment at that time as well, because we want to have a full set of comments from the public on this. Thank you.
Councilor Brown?
2 years is the time limit imposed by the council for this ordinance. Oh, sorry. 2 years was thank you, George. 2 years was the time limit imposed by the council itself for this ordinance. It's time for it to expire. The police commission knew months ago that it was going to expire. I know they were very busy, with the taser. But another subcommittee could have been appointed from the existing members. I think they had plenty of time to get it done. We received a few raw stats from Judge Allen last week when he was at our council meeting, but not really an in-depth analysis of any of the cases. But one of the statistics was there were 11 pretrial exclusions. That means that somebody was told they couldn't be somewhere, but they didn't even have a trial. They weren't even found guilty of any crime or misdemeanor. I don't know, I have a hard time with that one. I don't think it's legal. We will soon have more jail beds. We will soon have 8 more police downtown. I think they should be able to handle the situation if we let this thing expire. I'd be surprised if they couldn't, as a matter of fact. They're very capable. But they need a few more jail beds. I won't be supporting it. I think we should let it sunset, let the police commission analyze it, let us analyze it, and then, if the majority of council wants to restart it, then so be it. Do that next fall or in January, but I think we should let it go because it's questionable legality. But you're dealing with people that have no money for lawyers to appeal it, and take it through the court system to challenge the legality. So I won't be supporting it.
Councilor Zelinka?
I wasn't in favor of the exclusion zone initially, and I didn't vote for it initially, and I'm still skeptical of it. The only reason I'll support this extension is because I want to see the data. then that we asked the police commission to review this, the council did, and that we asked them to review the taser ordinance, and that took a lot longer than I expected it to. And there are only so many meetings that the police commission has, and they're a volunteer group. I think asking them to have taken on another task on top of the taser would have been pretty harsh on their schedules, since they are a volunteer group, and they do put in a lot of time and effort into this. So I look at this more as a procedural issue than a substantive issue on the exclusion zone. But I am interested in seeing statistics about who's been excluded under various classifications and for what and for how long. And I'm really interested in seeing how someone separates out the effects of the exclusion zone from the other things that have occurred downtown. I'm hard-pressed to see how that's going to be done, but I'd like to have some smart people look at that. And I'm also concerned about the due process about this exclusion zone. At our evaluation of Judge Allen, he mentioned that he had some concerns about this as well. So I would like to have Judge Allen weigh in on any changes or modifications he would like to see on this, on ways to ensure due process.
Councillor Clark.
I, too, would appreciate any recommendations from Judge Allen as a legal expert. I certainly think that he would be able to answer some of those concerns that many people have. I think he was a part of crafting the original, unless I am very much mistaken. But I do hear and see a few emails here and there, and hear comments now and again about people's concern around excluding someone from an area as if it had some conflict, some constitutional type conflicts, whether it be due process or otherwise. And I want to say, as a civil penalty, which is what this is, rather than an action as a civil penalty, it mimics and is the same or similar to an anti-stalking order or a restraining order that are a routine matter to keep people who may potentially hurt someone separated from someone else. And that's what I would say is an appropriate way to liken the action of the safety zone. And I wanted to say that so that people who hear this discussed at the table have what I consider a more accurate framework for the analysis. Thanks.
Councillor Brown.
I just wanted to add briefly, I am a downtown businessman. I have a business, and we've been there for 40 years, and I'm well aware with the problems that downtown has been through during that time period, and I am sympathetic to the idea, to the idea behind this exclusion ordinance. Believe me, I know exactly where people are coming from. The stories that we've heard, I could tell as many or maybe 5 times more. So I am sympathetic. I just don't think this is the way to go. I just wanted to clarify that. This is just not a kind of a theoretical thing with me. It's a deep-seated concern about law, civil rights, But I do understand the intent behind it. Thank you.
So I just want to add before we vote that just clarify that what we're voting tonight on is not the zone itself, but whether or not to extend the time so that the police commission can report back to us as we request it. So I think we separate those things in our thinking tonight. And in terms of the eventual discussion after we hear back from the police commission, I hope we will be hearing something, maybe some better direction in terms of dealing with the due process issue as well. So I think we're ready to vote. Would you please vote? 6 in favor and 2 in opposition. It passes. Thank you. I am going to now adjourn the City Council and convene a meeting of the Eugene Urban Renewal Agency. And we're going to be now, action 8 is commitment of Riverfront Urban Renewal District funds as match for Tiger II grant for the Franklin Multi-Way Boulevard. Council President?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to direct the agency director to commit to the use of Riverfront Urban Renewal District funds as the match for the Tiger II grant application and include the matching funds on the next supplemental budget after and if the grant is approved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Just wanted to make the comment for you all that when I was recently up at the Oregon Transportation Commission meeting and they were looking at the Tiger Grant applications, in that discussion the day that I was up there, the Franklin application was the top of the list. They discussed it as thinking that it should be number one. Just wanted you to know that. So that could change, I suppose, but that was certainly the what the commission was saying on that date. Councilor Ortiz.
So I'm going to take advantage of a situation that I have two of the, Rob and the council here, and the word Tiger Grant was used. And the last time it was used at this council was when we were looking for monies to do stuff along the highway. And so I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page, that as this part comes off, that we put Highway 99 corridor, the enhancement that needs to be done for sidewalks up on the list, or that it is on a list, because I've heard conflicting stories. So Rob, can you speak to that?
Councilor Ortiz, my understanding is you've requested that Highway 99 be on the list for United Front.
That's
and
correct.
At the staff level, we
You've done that.
intend to put that on the list,
Okay,
as you
okay.
have requested.
Okay.
This means we're going to.
Okay, I just,
Sorry. And we look for opportunities for that project. It's a challenging project to fund. I think, the challenge is looking at the different sources of funding that come along and then what projects are a good fit for that. Last time around, we put that project forward for Tiger funding, but we didn't think that was the right fit this time around.
well, I understand
So
because there was a
just-
matching needed from that, and that's why we're doing the urban renewal dollars, correct? So I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page, because it's really important to me that we start looking for getting that done while ODOT is working on the road. Thank
I
you.
agree.
Councilor Brown.
Thank you. I've got a few questions. When, I guess to Denny, first of all, I should know this, but I've forgotten when the Riverfront Urban Renewal District was created.
Ooh.
Just roughly, just
It was
a ballpark.
amended, it was most recently amended in
86 or
2004, and before that,
Is it like
90,
94?
or in the 90s.
1985.
19 when? 95?
85.
85.
I thought it was 94.
85, okay. All right. Approximately how much tax revenue is diverted from the general fund to the district every year? Same thing, just ballpark. I should know that too, but
Yeah, I think the district right now creates about $700,000 in increment, and
okay.
a portion of that would be the city's general fund, roughly 40% of whatever that increment is.
Okay. And do you recall when the streets that around the Morris Federal Courthouse were built?
Well, it was after the 2004 plan amendment, so it was within the last
Fairly recently.
3 to 4 years, yes.
Okay. Well, my whole point with all this is, and then this would be used for, is it mostly would be used for planning, right? For the Multi-Way Boulevard?
That's right.
To secure the matching,
The funds would
Mm,
the
be
grant.
for planning and for NEPA and for preliminary design. And so
Okay.
the idea would be to position ourselves, the city, so that when there's additional opportunities that come along, such as federal reauthorization of the transportation bill, that we can be well positioned to receive those funds that could potentially pay for construction of the Multi-Way Boulevard. But at this point in time, this would pay for the NEPA work and for preliminary design of the street.
Okay. And will LTD be participating in the cost of this planning?
Not
For the EMX?
They won't be participating in the cost. I think at the time that we get to construction, however, I think that is where we could where the transit would probably enter the conversation.
I see. Okay. Well, and then why are we doing 40% instead of 20%?
So as it says in the AIS, the first round of Tiger, there were 1,400 applications, and only 51 of them were funded. So when we sat down with our colleagues in Springfield and talked about, how do we put a competitive application forward, and we felt like, and the documents from the federal government too really encouraged overmatching, and we felt like if we wanted to put an application forward that would have a chance of getting funded, we really would need to overmatch. And so we thought a 40% match would be a competitive grant. And so they're on both sides. In fact, the Springfield side, they're actually matching them at a higher level than 40% on the Springfield side. On the Eugene side, it would just be 40%.
Well, I think that's really kind of a strange way to, I guess that's the reality, but to me that seems very odd to say, well, the match is 20%, but then, you're not going to get it unless you go 40, 50, 60, 70. So I can't support this. I'm going to vote against it. Oddly enough, I want to see the money stay in the Riverfront Urban Renewal District and be used in the district for a specific project in the district, such as, instead of this vague, layered onto these other vague planning efforts for the bigger picture. Nothing's really been built until those streets. Nothing is going to be built this year. Nothing was built last year. We're collecting the money every year, but we're not building anything. We don't even have anything listed to build. Money's been spent on planning, but nothing's been built, and there's nothing planned to be built. So I personally would rather see the money. I want to see something built. I want to see this money stay in the Riverfront Urban Renewal District and be used to build something. Maybe if we move City Hall to eWeb, save it for that. So, there's all kinds of possibilities. So I will not be supporting this.
Councilor Zelenka?
Glad to hear that this application is number one on the list. It's very competitive, and therefore we need to distinguish ourselves, and that's the rationale for the higher match, which in part has put us at number one. And this is a joint application with the City of Springfield. There's kind of our part, which is this side of the bridge, and their part on that side of the bridge. Can you talk about that a little bit more, what Springfield's intending to do?
Sure. They're also building a multi-way boulevard in Glenwood. And then there's also an affordable housing component to this. So Eugene has a long history of buying vacant land banks for affordable housing. So the idea is that on the Eugene side, there would be a purchase of a land bank site in the Walnut Station Mixed-Use Center area for affordable housing. And then Eugene would also share its experience with Springfield. And for the first time, they would actually buy a land bank site in Glenwood for affordable housing, which would be the first time that they would have done that. And so we've been partnering with them on the application, which has been a really nice, good example of collaborating with the City of Springfield.
And this is actually a joint Department of Transportation, Housing and Urban Development HUD grant. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about the housing part of it a little bit more than what you just did, about how that interplays in this, and that how it will eventually potentially impact the Franklin Multi-Way Boulevard?
Sure. Well, the Obama administration has really encouraged these agencies to work together, and so they issued this joint notice of funding availability, a NOFA, and they've really encouraged joint funding applications. So that's why we're going in together on both the transportation and the housing side, both in Eugene and Springfield, and they really encourage that collaboration, both transportation and housing, and both interjurisdictionally. And we think that makes it a much stronger application. And they see that, having housing along transit corridors, mixed-use development, all the kinds of things that we're talking about along the Franklin corridor, both in Eugene and Springfield, those are the kinds of things that they're looking for.
So this isn't just about streets; it's about the mixed use and the housing that occurs in conjunction with that Milky Way Boulevard and
Absolutely.
the redevelopment of the whole area. So, which is why, and ours is a very strong proposal, which is why probably it's number one, because it does incorporate that housing component to it, which is really what the mixed use center is in the Franklin Boulevard. So, all in all, I think this is a good use of urban renewal dollars. And of course, we have to do planning before we can do the infrastructure investments. So this sets the stage for us to do that planning and do those investments, but also the NEPA work, which allows us to go after federal money as well.
Absolutely. And the getting the Milky Way Boulevard built is really seen as sort of laying the groundwork for the redevelopment to happen on the north side.
Right. So eventually we'll be investing in infrastructure dollars into the roads and the infrastructure there. But
Yeah, and keep in mind, one of our priorities for reauthorization of the federal transportation bill was the funding to build the Milky Way Boulevard. Congressman DeFazio put that project forward on his high priority project list. So if we were to get this funding for the NEPA work, it would position Eugene so that if we get the funding that DeFazio has requested, that then we could really be positioned to move forward with the construction in a timely manner.
would that require matching grants for those construction dollars?
It would, but it would be a lower match amount
Like
for the construction, 10%.
1090.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
The other thing is that
90% federal.
I think it's 10.27.
10.27?
Federal. Oh, the match amounts. I see what you mean. 10% local, 90% federal. Yes.
Oh, okay.
The other, and then the affordable housing projects would be sort of pilots for the kind of mixed-use development we could have on both the Eugene and Glenwood side.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Just before I call the next person in the queue, I just want to point out that this is a plan that we've had, and this is another step in a plan we've had in motion, as you pointed out, and you can't get to the next place without going through the NEPA process. So we have to kind of walk through these different parts of the process. And I also want to point out that just last week, I believe they passed a bill at the federal level, the Livable Cities, and this is part of the Livable Cities kind of planning work that they're trying to encourage all over the country. So we're doing exactly what we are being encouraged to do in terms of good growth management and good land use transportation planning. Okay, Councilor Taylor?
Thank you. I wish that we weren't diverting money from the general fund to urban renewal, period. But since the money's there, this seems to be an acceptable use for something that's already in progress anyway, and I will vote for it. Thank you.
Councilor Brown?
Well, I just wanted to clarify that I think there might be a misimpression that the community challenge grant funds are somehow tied with the transportation grant. They're not. It's already been taken care of. I mean, it could be applied for separately, probably. That matching 20% match is $300,000, and that's we've already voted on that. We approved that with community development block grant funds. If the housing was, if the urban renewal money was necessary for the housing, I would probably approve it, but it's not. It's going for the other grant, for the Tiger grant. It's not going for this, the one that would be for the housing. So there's a distinction. They're not the same thing. There's two different things here, and that's why I'm opposing it. I would certainly never oppose land banking for affordable housing. Thank you.
Councilor Clark?
Thank you, Bob. This is probably a silly question, but I got to ask it anyway as a counselor from North Eugene. This council has expressed highest priority for transportation in the city is the Delta Highway, the Beltline Highway between Coburg and River Road. So I guess I want to ask, even though we've already begun this process with the Tiger II grant, could one of the benefits that's been expressed is that being successful with this can hasten this project and bring it to bear more quickly. Could any particular part of that Tiger II grant, if we were to do it in a different way, bring about the Beltline project in a quicker fashion?
Are you saying could we have applied for Beltline instead?
Yeah, because as Councilor Zelenka has mentioned, getting those monies to be able to use for the NEPA is going to push this along a little faster. And so I guess since the Beltline is our highest priority, I would hate to see this one happen in advance of the Beltline if we could have used it for that purpose.
Well, we're kind of far along this path right now. The applications, we're not in a place where we can redirect the ship, let's say, but it's not the Tiger grant program is really geared towards mixed-use development and multimodal transportation and that sort of thing. And we decided that Franklin would be a good fit for that, and that the Belline project, which is more of a highway project, just didn't seem like the right fit for Tiger. We have requested federal funding for Beltline, United Front, that sort of thing. We're going to bat for the Belline program. I mean, the Belline project. Tiger just didn't seem like a good fit for.
I accept that and appreciate that. Do you see them on separate timelines, one being considerably longer than the other? These two projects?
It just depends on which one gets the funding when. So, for example, there's funding in the draft STIP for Beltline, but there's only $2.5 million of funding for that. And ODOT staff have told me that they think that we're going to need, $7 million of funding for the NEPA process for Beltline. So we need to help work with ODOT to try to find more funding for the NEPA. But right now, I think the challenge is going to be getting the facility plan approved for that project. So there's some hurdles to get through with that project. In the near term, getting the facility plan approved and getting the NEPA funding. So I think those are the challenges right now. And if we could work through the United Front and try to come up with the gap, get through the gap of the NEPA funding on Beltline, I think that would be a good thing.
Okay, thanks, Rob.
Sure.
Councilor Zelenka?
Danny or Rob, so this is actually as it says in the AIS, HUD and DOT, Department of Transportation, have created one application receiving funding requests for both of these programs, so to encourage these kind of mixed development ones. So if we just had put in a housing grant, what would be our chances of getting that, as opposed to putting one in that's both?
We think the chances are better if we do both together, because our sense is that's what they're looking for.
My sense, too, is that if we just had put in a housing grant, we wouldn't even be on the list, probably.
We'd have a shot at it. We just don't think it would be as competitive.
Yeah, my understanding is, do you know how many applications there were for the last, or for this one, or for the last one of these?
The Community Challenge Planning Grant Program is a new program. So this is the first time around for it.
What about the Tiger grant?
Tiger, there were 1,400.
And how many were given out?
51.
1,400, and there were 51?
Yeah.
So, and oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so I suspect we're going to see similar numbers.
We may not get it anyway, right?
And we're just number one in Oregon.
That's right. Nothing to do with the other.
And there's how many states?
Number one in your heart.
Councilor Ortiz.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to respond to a comment that Councilor Clark made about the Beltline. Actually, that bridge the facility itself is okay. It's not safe, but from my understanding of the meetings that we've been going to, it's not safe to travel on it, but that the facility itself, the building of the bridge itself is safe. This was my understanding. I don't know if you've heard any different from the Beltline. And so it's not going to fall down, basically. It's a safety issue, and I don't feel like we're at that point to where we can be competing with these kind of things personally, because we haven't vetted those conversations.
Okay, I think we're ready to vote on this. Would you please vote? 7 in favor and 1 in opposition. It passes. Thank you. I'm going to adjourn the meeting of the Eugene Urban Renewal Agency and reconvene the meeting of the City Council. And our final agenda item is a work session on the police auditor evaluation process. Alana?
It's a work session.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll do this before I do that.
We're here tonight with the work session scheduled to discuss basically the process that we would like to use to conduct a performance evaluation of Mark Isner, police auditor, who has been institution now for slightly more than a year. In your package, I have attached three sets of documents for your review. Basically, what I did was try to have them review where we had left off and what had been decided upon by previous council as far as the documents to be used in reviewing the economy plans. As we go through those, the attachment A was the criteria that the council used for the auditor, and then attachment B was a slightly different version that would be used by CRB, and then just to reference the ordinance that you used to determine the decision in 2008. So I understand that in going through this process that the CRB has already taken the time to utilize the criteria in their document. For your consideration when you get to that point, and we'll certainly utilize that. At this time, I think it's important to hear from you on how you would like to go forward this time around, either with the same set of criteria and documents and process that we utilized last time, or if there is something similar to what we just completed with the city manager evaluation process that might interest you, or another model of interest to you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Alana, very much for preparing this. Good job. I like what we have here as criteria from the previous evaluation as a place to start with this year's evaluation. I would like to add to it, and this is just ideas that I'm brainstorming. There were parts of the manager's evaluation that I really liked. For one, I liked the community stakeholder panel of people that went through and talked and answered some of those questions in advance of our taking a look at that as well. I liked seeing their feedback first and would like to do a similar thing with the auditor. I mean, from my perspective, personally, I think that would be valuable. And number two, I think I'd like to keep the criteria, the meets, exceeds, or does not meet expectations metric for this year's evaluation, but I'd like to see us move to a similar thing that we've talked about, or perhaps that we decided to move to with the city manager, where we look at the 4-point metric and assign good, bad, fair sorts of progress towards those things, and then put a number towards that so that it's more of a mechanical evaluation of each of these points that then corresponds to what we pay the guy or how much we, are giving them in a very fair sort of analysis. So I guess to sum up, if we can do the panel this year, I'd like to hear that from you. And then keep this same format, allow us to come back in September or whenever it comes onto the agenda, look at our review from those folks, fill out our own review, look at the CRB stuff, and then change it to parallel the city manager's stuff for next year. Thanks. Could you tell me, is that possible to do the panel for in the timeline that we have?
That would be possible when you're not we can talk about the timeline that this would be a criteria that would be important for you to implement that. And there are additional sources for feedback that certainly could make a lot of sense.
Councillor Pryor.
Thank you. I think Councillor Clark really summarized a lot of where I would want to go. I appreciated the city manager's process, and I think incorporating many of those things into this one would be beneficial. The only thing that I might change from what Councillor Clark was talking about is I would move to a 4-point appraisal system this year. I think the expectations metric is challenging for me, and I think it's a difficult one to use. And there are countless performance evaluation tools out there that use the successful, metric, the kind of measurement, 4-point scale, whatever. I don't know why we would need to keep it for this year. I would love to implement it as soon as possible, simply because I think the notion of expectations being the metric puts a level of subjectivity into it that's challenging when you try to create some sort of an absolute. And so I would probably ask that we create in the tool some sort of a 4-point scale for this year.
Yes.
And that's certainly something that we can look at doing this year with the understanding that, as I mentioned earlier, CRB has already done their part, and they have used the current system of rating. So we should either figure out a way to utilize that to inform you on your evaluation if you use the 4-point metric system, or we could ask them to go back and redo that model.
I know, and I understand it's a challenge, and I appreciate the fact they've already done their work. It's just, to me, it's a flawed system, and you've got one group that's done it by what I consider to be a flawed system. It's not a reflection on the CRB; it's a reflection on the tool. And then to have everybody use the flawed system because somebody already did it, to me, is why do we need to do that? So I would be comfortable if everybody else was using a 4-point system and they use theirs. I wouldn't have a problem using both. In other words, that to me would not be a reason to not do it. But the rest of the group may say, hey, I can wait till next year with no problem. I'm just expressing my concern that it's very hard to evaluate people based on what subjectively my expectation was.
Councilor Zelenka?
I also like the city manager process. I think that went well. I think the panel is a very good idea if we can pull it off this year. I, too, struggle with the expectation metric. I find it very difficult to use, in part because we all have expectations. If we think the police auditor city manager is supposed to be doing an outstanding job and they meet that, then, you get meets expectations, and really they're beyond that. So I think it's a very problematic scale. So I much prefer the fair, good, excellent, outstanding, or the 4-point scale, Councilor Pryor, and I'd like to see us do that this year. If the CRB would want to redo their evaluation, that'd be great. If they don't, then we could use whatever they came up with. But for the City Council, I'd like to do that this year.
So, Ilona, have you thought about kind of doing the same thing that we did with city manager in terms of the self-evaluation and the goal setting, and then you're responding to the self-evaluation, the goal setting, and seeing how he progresses in the direction? You can do that scoring based on that information.
Yes, Mayor, certainly so far what I've heard is an interest in trying to replicate as much as possible the process that we talked about moving forward, including what we did this year with the city manager process. I think that's something that's doable. We'll look at the calendar, we'll look at timelines, and we don't have anything scheduled yet, so we just need to get some more information and talk about possible other sources for feedback. I know I have some ideas, and I'm sure all of you will provide me with some thoughts on to solicit feedback. And so I've already talked to the auditor and certainly provided self-evaluation on his part. Once I hear from him tonight on direction, self-evaluation from him, we strongly recommend that's what we utilize before in the city manager process and his audit process. I think it's very appropriate. And then we will structure the appropriate tool after tonight for your use. I guess one point of clarification would be if the criteria that have been set forth before would still be of interest to you, but we would just change up the metrics rating for your use.
Yeah.
And then and then I'll work with CRB on options if that's what.
I guess the most important thing to me, and I felt that way when we were talking with the city manager about his evaluation, is that we have a shared understanding of what the auditor is trying to achieve in the next year, so that he understands what we are expecting, so he can move in that direction. The clarity seems really, it's very hard for people to be evaluated on something that wasn't clear to them, or that there's 8 different opinions about. So that seems really important to me, that we ensure that happens at the front end.
And I think goal setting then for the next year, what we happens in October, would make a lot of sense.
Yep.
It certainly is helpful for your employees to have an opportunity to.
Great. Right. Councilor Polling.
When exactly is Mr. Gissner's evaluation due?
He was hired a year ago at the end of June. So ideally, usually we try to go within a year. Usually it's kind of anywhere from probably a year and a couple of months to a year and a half.
So basically, we're past due on it. Well, I, like everybody else, like the process we just finished with the city manager. However, we started the process with Mr. Gissner. For us to go back and ask the CRB, on top of everything else they do, to redo their evaluation of Mr. Gissner, I think is wrong. Granted, I've done hundreds of evaluations on employees, and I've used a numerical system as well as the meet expectation system. It may be flawed, but it's not totally bad. So I think we as a council should kind of cowboy up, muscle our way through this year's evaluation the way it's set out, and then change it for next year. There's no sense of changing course of action in the middle of a project. I mean, we've done these type of evaluations before on the city manager and on other folks, so let's just continue on with it. Use this system this time and then change it so everybody's on the same page at the start of the next process, because basically we're kind of doing apples and oranges. I mean, CRB does it one way. If we change the numerical system, we do it another. That doesn't make any sense to me. It's not consistent.
Councilor Brown.
Well, I think the expectation system's okay because you can always add your own comments. And maybe we should just go ahead and use that because CRB's already done it. And then the ones that wanted to could add their numericals to the thing. And then next year we would just switch over for everything. And that's just an idea. But I actually have a question. Who would be on the citizens panel? And it seems like it's a little bit different for the police auditor in that, it's one thing for the manager because he's the head of all the departments and the department heads were on some of them were on the panels, and various community people, who he interacts with throughout the year were, close observers of city doings were on the panel. But are that many people familiar with the auditor? I'm just wondering, unless they're in, who would be on the panel besides outside of the CRB? Well, I don't need to know individuals, but what types of...
ACLU.
Police Commission as another possible group. Either you can select the chair, you could do that whole group, depends on how broad you want us to go out there and get that feedback. And certainly others that out there from the community perspective and constituents that you might feel are very relevant as well. Those are some examples.
Yeah, HRC. Yeah.
Okay.
Councilor Brown?
Yeah, okay, great, thanks.
Okay, Councilor Zelenka, you're up.
Oh,
Cowboy up, guy.
Easy now.
I've done my cowboying.
Okay. Councilor Clark?
Well, it sounds like we got kind of a split sort of reaction here to this, and I actually only put forward the idea of keeping the expectation portion, not because of the CRB, but to keep it in line with what we did with the city manager. But agree that the 4-point scale is probably a better metric. But for me, the part that is, or one of the parts that's important about that 4-part metric is to pre-tie what sort of compensation comes along with how that averages out from the complete council rating in advance of it, so that we don't separate the compensation and evaluation process, but instead kind of tie them together more closely. And I think that may take us a little more time than what we have ready to do, because it would take probably another council work session to talk about that for a second, or at least to be proposed as it was this last time with the city manager. So I guess I'll make a motion here, if it's all right, that even though I agree with what Councilor Pryor said and would be willing to do that, I think I'd move to adopt the current performance criteria for the police auditor with a self-evaluation to be completed by the police auditor and include a community panel evaluation. Just one other part.
Is that it?
And then to move forward with goal setting to parallel the city manager evaluation.
Okay, moved.
Second.
Second. Councilor Taylor.
I agree with keeping the current plan for this year. I don't know whether I agree with all the rest of that motion, but I think there isn't a lot of time to get a community panel to think about who would be on a panel even. I think we should stay with the same plan, the same method, and then maybe have a work session to discuss how to do it next year. So I move to delete all the motion about the panel and just, I move to amend to delete everything except using the current performance criteria and self-evaluation.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Okay, Councilor Pryor.
Well, thank you.
Yep.
I certainly want to cowboy up for this, so I can go along with the current system. If we're behind in terms of doing his evaluation, I probably would feel it's important to get the evaluation done rather than to spend a lot of time debating the exact system to use. While I may have preferences, I am moved by performance evaluations are important to do. And it doesn't seem like there is interest or support for making a lot of modifications in the interest of time. So if I have to choose between the two, I'll choose getting it done sooner rather than later, with the expectation that we will adapt the system for the next go-around.
Councilor Ortiz.
Thank you. I am okay with the original motion because, I need to put the mute button off again. My voice does carry. I am comfortable with the original motion that Councilor Clark put on, and I think that a community panel might be a little bit time-intensive. If there was a way we could just send a letter to interested parties or, a handful of people, to ask what their, just some pretty simple questions that they can or cannot get back to us, kind of what they did with the judge as far as, we sent letters to them and then just gave it back to us. That way we don't have to convene a meeting or a group or try and make sure that everybody has representation. I mean, just kind of a broad band of people, just a bunch of people. And just kind of just to hear what their, nothing that would change the direction in which we would go, but just their anecdotal comments. I would like that.
Speak to that.
Y'all are giving me some great feedback. Y'all. You're talking my hometown now, so actually I think with SurveyMonkey, which is a vehicle that we've used recently, we've used for other mechanisms quite recently in our work, we ought to be able to send out something that's electronic, attach an email with a link to whatever the identified group would be or individuals, and that can happen. We can do some real simple questions that have to be very fancy and get it out and ask them to respond within a week or two, and within a month be able to aggregate that data along with self-evaluation if that's determined and get that to you for your information, if that's of interest.
Councilor Clark?
Yeah, I won't support the amendment and would ask my colleagues to consider the original motion. I tried to kind of split the difference there, leaving it at the expectation thing, which is similar to what the CRB did, and leaving the criteria of the questions the same. But the only and making the changes into the next year like we did with the city manager, the only substantive difference is getting some input from the community. And I think that's actually pretty important and able to do pretty quickly, so I hope you'll support that.
Should it go back to your original, you don't necessarily want a panel, or you're more interested in what
I wanted to hear from a broad base of the community, and if I wasn't clear about that in my motion, that was my intent, and as described by Alana.
All right, so I think we're ready to vote on the amendment, the motion, the amended motion that was proposed by Councilor Taylor. Would you please vote on that? 4 and 4.
That's
So-
an interesting mix, too.
Something to do with this side of the table.
I think we need the community input.
I'll go with the community input, so I will vote against this and go back to the motion.
Oh, Lord.
Okay, so,
Zelenka has an amendment.
Councilor Zelenka?
I would like to amend it to include the four-point scalar fair, good, excellent, outstanding versus expectations metric.
Is there a second for that? There is no second. Okay. so-
Guys, for lack of a...
Okay, who have I got? Councilor Taylor?
I will have to vote again. Oh, I don't mind community input, but I think it would take a long time to talk about what parts of the community. I would like input, if we're going to do it, from the people who have made complaints, more than from other people in the community, the people who actually know, have had experience with the auditor. And I don't think there's time to do that and get it done quickly, so I'll have to vote against the original motion.
Councilor Ortiz?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor Clark, can we do the Survey Monkey as recommended by Ms. Holmes, or do you?
No, that's great. Beautiful.
Okay.
That was my intent.
Okay, good.
So I guess the only thing I would add to that is, I think the expectation is that this one is kind of a abbreviated community input, and I don't know how, maybe you will speak to Alana, how you are going to gather from everybody who they would like to be included on the Survey Monkey, but then with the next, as we move to the next evaluation, we'll be much more thoughtful about panel and who would participate and take the time to put something like that together that meets the interests of everybody here at the table. Okay, so did you yes, go ahead.
So what I can do is just send you an email and say, here's some groups that we talked about tonight that are there interested in supplementing that, and so who would I go to, if you could give me contacts so that we can include them on the list.
One question,
to,
quick.
Send out the survey to. And that's what I would do, and just put a closing time on that, and once I hear we can create a survey and build it and then get something out.
Councilor Clark?
Survey Monkey won't be anonymous, will it? It will be tied to the person who gave the answer so that we'll know who said what?
We use that process, and we talk about them being confidential. And so there's a mechanism in place where we don't track the information by individuals.
Actually, let me ask a better question. I apologize for interrupting. When we did the manager's evaluation, did we tie any of those answers to the specific questions to specific panel members? Because I can't remember that we did. We may have just bundled them all together, didn't we? Okay, then.
We said, here were the folks that did participate.
Right.
For example, the execs that participated, and then
In the other panel, right.
responded. And so instead of a panel where we met with people, it was just, this is the group that we elicited this information via Survey Monkey.
And Survey Monkey will allow for written comments as well, yes?
If we ask, we can create a box where additional comments can be
Cool.
provided.
Thanks.
Councilor Pryor?
Thank you. I'm going along with this because when you mentioned Survey Monkey, I know that can be done quickly. And I'm sensitive to the fact that we're overdue and it should be done quickly. And I like the Survey Monkey idea, and I just want to reinforce the fact that, or the option that this would be done quickly. Okay.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please vote on the motion. 6 in favor and 2 in opposition, it passes. And so I think with that, we have follow-up work to do with you, but you'll send... Okay, thank you.